Hi students, thank you so much for your feedback based on the tutorials we worked on last week on Diem. Yes, Diem, and I got many questions from you, so we're going to go through those questions like a lion this morning, and let's move this needle so we can understand more about Diem. Many of you asked lots and lots of questions about the barriers to Diem. Will there ever be a global currency? Would there be future stablecoins similar to Diem? Will cryptocurrency be the unit of exchange in the future? These are interesting questions. Well, it's very hard for there to be a global currency because the 190 plus countries around the world would probably never agree to it. Look at the problems we've had with the euro, and it took many years for the euro to come to being around the 2000s odd. Around the year 2000, many years of negotiation, and then even then when they got the euro, then Denmark didn't join, and then Germany gave up its Deutschmark, France gave up its franc, but then the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Denmark, Finland, they didn't join. So therefore, it's not like that you can just have 5 people to agree and then all the other 200 countries around the world have to agree to it. It's not going to happen. It's very unlikely to happen. In the end, a currency is a state's identity, and you don't want to usurp the identity of a state, and that's very important. Will there be future stable coins similar to Diem? Well, there's already 66 stable coins out there around the world, and so they're already out there. Are they similar to Diem? Maybe they don't have as much publicity and they don't have the platform that Facebook has, and so in that way they're not going to be like Diem, and so Diem has a much stronger chance of becoming a single stable coin for the world. But that's not a global currency. It may be a global cryptocurrency that is accepted around the world, but you've got to think about, well, how do these things come about? They come about because the new generation of populations around the world, like Generation Z, like you, see it as a good thing, and though you start to use it for paying for goods and services, and that depends on tradespeople and retail shops accepting that currency for the payment of goods or services. So new economies come along because new populations come along and the new generations accepting of it, and then that's how things change. So it's possible to have a global cryptocurrency, a stable coin like Diem, but it will not replace individual countries' currency because that is the state's identity, and no state will want to give that up. Okay. Will cryptocurrency be the unit of exchange in the future? Well, it already partially is, and it really depends on the ecosystem, like I said, and the Generation Z and the people offering goods and services. So then it becomes a unit of exchange for those limited goods and services. But right now, it's not really accepted on major platforms like Amazon, so to speak, but maybe it's accepted in other platforms that are more niche and offer a certain set of goods and services. Okay. Why Diem won't be a currency in the future? Well, like I said, states are against it. States do not want to replace their currency with Diem. Why did Libra change to Diem? Number one, Diem is a new set of rules, and so the association is broader, and Facebook is 2 steps away from the association of Diem. It's represented in Diem through another one of its subsidiaries and 2 of its subsidiaries, but not directly part of Diem. So the association changed. A few other things changed. But also, when you have a change, you want to change your identity too. So you want new wine, new bottles, not new wine in old bottles. Why did Spotify and Uber, why are they part of the association? Well, Spotify and Uber are kind of the new economy. So you want, and they see the future. Well, no one can plan the future. No one can predict the future, But you want to know where the future is going, and so in order to do that, you should be a member of some type of association like this, as with Temasek, the Singapore state-owned investor that we talk about later. If an ambitious plan is not succeeded, it will cause financial crisis. It will cause it to affect big companies. Yes, it's possible. Financial crisis happens when there are huge bets and leverage made on one asset, like mortgage-backed securities in 2008, and that led to a decrease in liquidity in the financial system and a possible run on the banks. But banks, worried about a run on the banks, stopped lending to each of the other banks, so there was a decrease in trust, and then that reduced the whole liquidity in the system, and it required the government to come in and try and rescue some of the major players. But for that to happen in the cryptocurrency space, you're going to have to move from that 1% of asset value that cryptocurrencies currently share out of the total financing instrument pie around the world. Just 1%, it would have to go up to 30 or 40%, and then it will create a problem. And that may not happen for another 50 years. Who knows? But never say never to a financial crisis. There's always one around the corner every 30, 40, 50 years. Okay, let's keep moving here. Which financial service is actually most affected by Diem? Well, traditional banks. Why? Because they make a lot of money from payments and the remittances system. The Singapore dollar remains one of the currencies in the basket of the reserve backed by Diem. And the only reason why, is that the only reason why Temasek joined Diem? No. Of course, Singapore dollar, first reason. But number two, they sought innovative technologies like blockchain as a transformative enabler of growth. And they see that the future opportunity for Singapore to be a fintech hub as being very important for that. And so that fits in like a glove with Singapore's strategic focus on making sure that they are always preparing and have readiness for the future. Did anything change when Libra changed its name to Diem? As I said, the Facebook company Novi is now the member, not the Facebook. And also Breakthrough Initiatives, run in part by Mark Zuckerberg, is part of the association. But Facebook is now no longer part of the association. The association is much more independent, with members from the WEF and the World Monetary Fund part of the association. So it's totally an independent entity compared to what Libra was. Will Diem be as successful as Ripple or any other well-established currency in the near future? We will have to wait and see. Ripple, being micropayments to the world by a blockchain, and has the support of banks and is well established. So that's different from Diem. Diem hasn't even started yet, and Diem will not necessarily have the support of banks. So Ripple has its own ecosystem with the banks. So Ripple definitely has a stronger advantage than Diem. There seems to be a lot of anti-Diem groups. How are they going to proceed with that? Well, we're just going to have to wait and see. Why Diem has the least effect on M-PESA? Well, M-PESA already has an established ecosystem via SIM cards and its receipt system. So you give money to a convenience store, they put the money on the SIM card, and then you exchange the money from your mobile phone to someone else's mobile phone, from one SIM card to the next. Well, how are users able to purchase Diem if they don't have bank accounts? You go to a convenience store and then they put money onto your Diem card or onto your Diem wallet that is on your phone. And so you don't need a bank for that, like you do that. You do that in other cash payment cards already in Malaysia and other countries around the world. If Diem provides stability, most countries with an unstable currency will not adopt Diem. Is that right? Well, most countries with an unstable currency number one, they have a government that may not be popularly elected, but number two, that the government has been changing the rules of how business does things regularly. Like Zimbabwe government, they went and took land away from white landowners over a decade and a half ago. And Venezuela, they're changing the rules. Argentina, there was different challenges there. Different challenges for number three, how the governments may have mismanaged the opportunities that the country has had, or they have actually laundered money, or they have actually lost money on behalf of the population, and that's created unstable currencies. So in some ways, unstable currencies are with governments that are kind of mismanaging their economy in some way. Not whether they're popularly elected or not, but they're just mismanaged in some way. And so those type of governments, if they're already mismanaging the economy, it's likely that they're not going to think straight and say that, oh, Diem is the answer. They're not going to actually push for Diem as a replacement. Again, they don't want to lose their identity as well. Wow. Yes, I wish we have a chance to discuss the Chinese digital currency, the yuan, since it appears inside the tutorial questions. Well, the Chinese digital currency, yuan, the China is replacing some of the cash in circulation with the yuan, but it's still through the traditional banking system in China. So it's not replacing the bank system, it's not replacing anything, it's replacing cash. And so it's just going to make things in China so much more efficient. Whereas Diem is kind of an alternative to any traditional currency out there. And it's going to create its own ecosystem of goods and services providers and people that don't want to have a bank or cannot have access to a bank as readily. Very, very good questions here. Future possibilities. Is Diem to apply it in the future or just temporarily? It appears it will be in the future. Of course, I said it may not be around in 2 years' time. Who knows? Like Libra, we thought was the next best thing. Then suddenly, bang, less than 12 months after announcing Libra, then Diem is now the new kid on the block. Remember, there's 66 stable coins out there already floating around the world. And it's a matter of who can get the largest ecosystem of goods and services and who can have the largest payment platform like Facebook already has. Payment platform, I mean, in terms of application platform. Are there any possibilities that maybe a bank will accept Diem? Maybe, but maybe not. Is the advantages of Diem will be greater than its disadvantages, or the disadvantages of Diem greater than advantages? Look, regulators are pushing against anything that's new. All right, consumers, especially the younger generation like you, the Z generation, is pushing the other way because you see convenience, you see cost saving, and convenience with remittances, with transactions, etc. And so you're always pushing for efficiency and the new economy. And so there's always this backwards and forwards going on. And it's not about there's 6 advantages and 3 disadvantages, so therefore we should go ahead. This is more like a way an economy is changing. Economies, or the global economy, is changing over the decades. All right, so it's just a new economy shift that's happening, and different countries will adopt it faster than others. But there will always be a list of disadvantages and advantages no matter what. Okay, let's keep moving here, and we're finishing up very, very quickly. Why people, especially regulators, are still concerned that Diem would be able to access private data information where social media and Google are already doing it. This is the thing. All right. Remember, when you are fighting an enemy, you need to fight physically, and then you need to fight mentally. In World War II, in other wars, even in the Middle East, different wars in the Middle East, they would drop leaflets from the air to the populations to tell the populations how bad the current government is, or the current regime is, or any messaging out there. It's psycho warfare, mental warfare. It's just getting into the psyche. That is what this private data information concern is all about, because many of us are sharing information anyway every day as we go on. All right. But regulators will point to, look what happened to Facebook 2-3 years ago when millions and millions of people's private information were compromised. Don't let this happen again. Don't buy this new Diem currency. All right. This is mental warfare. This is no facts. There's no facts here to say that Diem will be hacked in the future, that your privacy is at risk in the future with Diem. But the regulators will use that as a mental warfare. All right. The physical warfare is actually the facts, the economic facts of Diem versus the bank traditional currency. You can lay up all the facts of each and then have that discussion and that debate. It's more like a courtroom proceeding, and then it's up for the jury to decide. But this privacy thing is a mental warfare. Yes, privacy concerns are always around us. Generation Z, you're not as concerned as Generation Y or the baby boomers. All right, it changes with generations. All right, so in some ways this is a mindset, and for many it's a mental warfare and playing with the hearts and minds of populations to get the population to feel that the regulators are on their side. And if the population feels the regulators are on their side and they can say that Diem is not good for you, then you'll accept that, and therefore the regulators win the battle. Wow, amazing. It's psychological warfare. Actually, I think the fundamentals behind Diem is actually sensible, unlike other crypto, and I think it's been penalized because of history. Exactly, it's psychological warfare that's going on at the moment. Would regulators actually allow Diem to start up, given that many members of the association are part of companies in one way or another? Well, it depends on who the members are. Regulators can't really stop ordinary companies from joining the association, because ordinary companies are allowed to do many things unless you have proof that they are doing anti-money laundering. They are doing money laundering. Ordinary companies do not have to do KYC, know your customer, like banks have to. Banks are under tighter regulation, so therefore joining the association is kind of against regulations that banks have signed up for. All right, companies can join because they're not regulated like banks. So that's the difference, and so it's okay for ordinary companies. So why did MasterCard and Visa not join? Well, they could have joined. They originally did join, then they pulled out. That was more because of regulation risk. Maybe that they may be at risk of being investigated in the future. And then once they start to get investigated, then a cloud goes over their business and the stock price just goes down. You know what happened to Alibaba over the last 5 months. Like I said in the tutorial, if you're going to investigate me, please find me tomorrow so I can get on with my business. It's not the fine that kills you. It's the months and months or years and years of being under a cloud of investigation that kills your business and reputation. Wow. Okay, some other questions and we'll finish up with this, and maybe I'll probably make another longer video. But how are students supposed to get participation marks if always some students answer the question? Just got to go faster. Put your hand up. Why do students not participate? Because you're afraid that your answer is not correct, or you may be embarrassed because you don't know the full answer, or that professor might pick on you for a second to explain further. What I'm saying to you is put your hand up and don't be embarrassed that you don't know everything. So put your hand up and say, look, professor, I don't know the full answer to this, but this is what I think. And that's one way of actually minimizing your potential embarrassment, because if you feel you're going to be embarrassed, then you're not going to put your hand up at all. But put your hand up, say yes, press the button, bang the floor, turn your microphone on and say, can I say something? Just put your hand up and say something to get the professor's attention. That's what you have to do. Some of you asked me about what does Prof. Neil have for breakfast? What is Prof. Neil's morning routine? I'll talk about that in another YouTube, and very important that we talk about these things, because your mental preparation for the start of each day, my morning routine, is so critical to you doing a really good job yourself. And I'll share that in another video. That's for now. There's your questions on fintech, Diem, cryptocurrency. See you in the tute. See you in some tutes later this week, and hopefully a lecture or the workshop. And happy cryptocurrency. All right. Have a lovely day. stay positive, and put your hand up in all the tutes, put your video on, and see you in a tute close to you. Bye for now.